Hello and welcome back. It is week 3 in the NFL, and there's a lot of things to report. A lot of things going on, and I'll just dive into it. It's probably going to be a pretty long video, and I'm just going to lay out my ideas and everything I've been experiencing up to this point. Now, the first couple of weeks have been pretty rough for me. My record is currently 4-5. 4 wins and 5 losses. However, since I use Chase systems, I'm actually up by $1,500 at this point. Now, I'd really like to drive this point home. You know, one of the things that I've been told repeatedly since I started studying this is to never use Chase systems. You know, people act like you sacrifice kittens to Satan if you even bring up the subject of chasing. However, I will agree Chase systems are dangerous, but they work. And the fact that I actually have a profit to speak of when my record is 4-5 is proof of these Chase systems working. Because, you know, if I was to flat bet, I'd be in the hole right now. So I think that's a really great point. You know, that's not the way that I want to start out, but hey, a profit is a profit, and I will take it. So, that being said, let's move on. One of the things that we talked about in my videos, one of the things I track is any team that wins or loses against the spread by 18 points or more. I expect a reversal, and most of the times what I'm trying to do is, if I see a team win by 18 points or more, I will fade that team. And I usually try to find a bunch of them and put them inside a 10-point teaser to give me a cushion. However, in week 1, I had 4 teams that hit this standard that I'm looking for, this key thing that I'm focusing on, and you would not have needed the 10-point teasers for any of them. Okay, so you had the Tennessee Titans, which won against the spread by 31 points. Now, the key is to remember this is against the spread. This is not how much the differential in the score was. I can't remember if they were underdogs in that game, so the 31 against the spread is probably larger, I think. I believe they were the underdogs in that game. Now, Tampa Bay, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers lost by 31. Okay, and now these are 2 underdogs. Let's take a look at what happened in week 2. In week 2, Tennessee came back. You know, they won their first week by 31 points. They lost to the spread by 14 in the second week. Now, Tampa Bay lost by 31 in the first week, came back and won by 17 in the second. Now, I got a couple more teams. Minnesota lost by 20 in week 1, and then in week 2 they won by 7.5. Then San Francisco, who won by 20 in week 1, lost by 19 in week 2. This is incredible, and it demonstrates the pendulum cycle theory perfectly. You know, these are reversals, and part of the reason why this is occurring is, you know, people get scared when they see a team lose by that much, and they'll back off. So the spread has to move to get people to start betting on them again. And the opposite happens when they win. You know, people saw the Tennessee Titans, you know, come out and play a really strong game against kind of a weak opponent, but it was enough to get people to start shelling out money on the Titans, and then they came out and laid an egg in the next game. And now on the other hand, there was a lot of people talking up Minnesota, and sadly enough, I was on this game. You know, Minnesota was supposed to come out and be really tough this year. Teddy Bridgewater has been looking good as a quarterback. Adrian Peterson came back. You know, there's a lot of things going on for this team, And well, they just laid an egg in the first week, and I was like, wow, and that's another key point, is like, a lot of this we're talking about public crowd psychology, people getting scared and not wanting to pull a trigger on a team. Well, I'm part of that psychology. I didn't want to touch them with a 10-foot pole in that next game, and then they came out and won. So it's important to understand that, the psychology that we're talking about, you're going through this as well as the other people. So you want to stay focused on that. And a lot of times by focusing on the numbers, that will help you keep an even keel instead of acting emotionally when looking at these things. But, the main point of this is in week 1, we had 4 teams that, won or lost to the spread by 18 points or more, and each one of them came back and had the exact opposite result the next week. This is something that you really want to look for, and it can make you money. Okay, moving on. There is some teams that are definitely, we've learned in the first couple of weeks that we're overvalued, and I think there are some undervalued teams as well. I'm going to have to watch further to see how they develop, but 2 of the teams that I love to pick on, they've been cellar dwellers forever, actually played some decent games in week 2. The Oakland Raiders and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I was actually fading both of those teams in a 10-point teaser, and I was biting my nails right to the end of those games because, let's see, I had Cincinnati that week on the over, and I was able to take 10 points off from that, so I think it was like 35.5, and I won that easily. And then the Oakland game, I barely squeaked out of that by just 0.5. Depending on when you bought, that actually would have pushed, and in a teaser, that I'm not sure if that would count as a loss or if you get your money back. I'd have to look back on the rules on that to be sure. I think you get your money back, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But anyways, Jacksonville, I won that game by 1 point, and Oakland Raiders by half a point. Both of those very, very scary. And luckily I used 10-point teasers, so I turned a losing pick into a winning pick by doing that. But I got out of that by the skin of my teeth. So now I'm looking at those teams as they move on, and there's definitely an interesting game with the Jaguars coming up this week. They're facing the Patriots, and they're 13.5 point underdogs at the moment. They might have, the line may have moved by now, but we'll talk about that more in a moment as I talk about the semi-arbitrages. There's definitely a lot to report there as well. Okay, another thing to report. I am human. I'm not the guru sitting up on the mountain somewhere who knows all and never makes mistakes and does things perfectly. I did some things that ended up costing me some bets. Now the first one is on the semi-arbitrages. Okay, we got a video on that explains it in detail. I won't go into it in detail this time, but the basic idea of this is that I'm looking to bet both sides of a game and try to cover as many angles as possible and make a profit. So I'll take like the over and parlay that with the favorite and then bet on the under. So it covers 75% of all outcomes. And if you have handicapped those angles, so let's say you think the under is going to hit, well, now you've got a better than 75% chance of winning if you are correct. And if you think that the score does go over, that a certain team has an advantage in that situation, like the favorites, in that situation, I would lean the favorites most of the time. By combining those two, instead of a 75% chance, I estimate that you have more like an 80 to 85%, possibly even a 90% chance of winning that bet. So anyways, one of the mistakes I made is, I went in and I did a semi-arbitrage. Let's see, it was Miami against Washington in week 1, and Miami was 7-point favorites, and let's see, what did I do? I believe I had I parlayed Miami with the under on that game, I believe, and then I bet the over. And what happened is the under hit, but I didn't buy a half a point. I left it on that 7, and that was a critical mistake for 2 reasons. Number one, it ended up pushing. So the parlay, what they did is they canceled out the Miami -7 part of that bet and gave me that money back, and then just gave me the win for the under. And then I, of course, ended up losing on the over. So instead of this turning into a win for me, it was a loss. And it wasn't a total loss, but it was pretty devastating, because you get a lot of money sitting on the over, and then it's supposed to balance out with the bet on the under that is parlayed with this favorite team. So that was a pretty heavy loss that I sustained. And the second mistake that I made in there, not just buying the half point, but paying attention to a critical number. 7 is one of the most critical numbers in football. 7 and 3, because a 7, you score a field goal. Score a touchdown, and then the extra point, and that's 7 points. And then, of course, 3 points, that's a field goal. So these are 2 of the most critical numbers to pay attention to. And if you do any research about betting teasers, this comes up a lot, and this is a major topic, and I can't believe that I actually forgot to pay attention to that, and it flew right over my head. And unfortunately, mistakes like that happen, and despite learning from that mistake and paying attention to it, I actually made the mistake again on the total. I should have bought a half point on tonight's game. I'm on the Redskins, and it's the Redskins and the Giants, and I'm doing another semi-arbitrage on them. I'm going to go over that in a moment. But when I placed that bet, I bet, let's see, was it the under 44, and forgot to buy the half point before confirming it. And I was like, oh crap. So anyways, the main point on that is that I'm human. I do make mistakes, and sometimes they can be really bad mistakes. Like the next mistake I'm going to tell you about is probably the most embarrassing thing ever. Because what happened is I chose correctly. I was on Green Bay, and that was the Monday Night Football game against the Seahawks. And I had put study into this game, and I totally firmly believe that Green Bay was out for revenge, because the Seahawks had had their number for past few games that they've met, and they ended up kicking Green Bay out of the playoffs, and that was a really would leave a real sour taste. So I was thinking Green Bay was going to be out for blood in this game, and I was right. And so I placed my bet, and the next day I'm running around feeling like Superman, because the Green Bay Packers came out and they won, and it was definitely, I wouldn't call it a spanking, but it was an authoritative win. It was not a close game. And anyways, I was feeling really awesome about that, and I was running around talking about it to all my buddies at work, and then I went to look and go place another bet, and to my shock, I was down instead of up, and I'm like, what happened here? And I went into my history, and come to find out, I had put my money on the Seahawks and not the Green Bay Packers. And basically how this happens is by not double checking your bets. And I can't stress how important this is. A lot of times I'm at work and I'm placing my bet on my phone. And I have to do this in a hurry because, it's only in the time that I have that I'm on break. And if somebody else is there talking to me while I'm placing my bet, my attention's not fully focused on what I'm doing. And when that happens, bad things happen. You got to pay attention to what you're doing. You've got to double check your work. There's no excuse for that. There really isn't. So stick me in the corner and whap, hit me upside the head or something. That was the worst loss to take out of anything, because it's one thing to choose wrong, and it's another thing to be absolutely correct in your analysis and then find out that you lost because of something really stupid like this. So I'm passing this on to you. Not, this is very embarrassing for me to say to anyone. So, but I feel it's important because I think other people make those mistakes too. And, I want to put it out there so that you don't go out and make this same kind of mistake. Nothing stings worse than that. When you choose right and you lose anyways, that's just terrible. So, anyways, those were some really bad mistakes that ended up being the difference between winning and losing. Had I bought the half point on my semi-arbitrage, I would have ended up winning that, and that would have been a nice win to get my season started. Instead, it ended up being a loss. And then the Green Bay game, that was just, the worst. So I ended up chasing that with a semi-arbitrage. Very, very scary move. I put a lot of money on the line with that, and I ended up making it back. So right now I'm riding high on the semi-arbitrages because they seem to be really effective. And I rode the semi-arbitrage in the MLB from $1,700 to over $11,500. And that, it went gangbusters for me. So I may switch gears and use that as my primary strategy. We'll have to see, because one loss with a semi-arbitrage is devastating. You got to risk a lot of money to win a little, but your win ratio is so high with these things that I think, with the amount of time that I have to handicap in the NFL, I think I can, hit a really, really high percentage rate with these things, and I can possibly turn that bankroll into, possibly 20 grand by the end of the NFL. That would be awesome. My goal is 16,100. That's the 40% that I'm aiming for. But so far I'm up by 1,500, and I'm thinking that I'm going to actually be able to get beyond that number very, very quickly. So I'm looking at possibly going bigger. But, first things first, well, let's hit that 40% and then move on. Okay, now, speaking of the semi-arbitrages, I'm going to show you some of the things that I'm thinking about coming up in week 3. Today is Thursday. We've got the Redskins against the Giants, and there's a lot of things going on with this game. Of course, the pendulum cycle theory is all about studying psychology, and there's things going on in the psychology of the betting public as well as the teams, because Tony Romo just got injured, and he is out for 8 weeks. So the Dallas Cowboys, which looked to be the top contenders for the NFC East, now they're looking like underdogs. And let's see, the Philadelphia Eagles, they're looking really bad. And so basically what's going on right now is the Giants and the Redskins, they both see an opportunity to actually win their division, where just a week ago it was looking bleak. Now, facing each other, I'm thinking that the Giants have the edge on this game. Now, in my mind, these teams are fairly equal, except for one thing, and that's the quarterback position. You've got a mediocre quarterback on one team and a fairly elite quarterback on the other. And I think that is going to end up being the difference in this game. So I'm leaning the Giants, but I'm not going to take that on faith. Instead, I'm loading up on a semi-arbitrage, and I'm going to play every angle of this game and try to come up with a big win tonight. So basically, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw this out on my whiteboard, and I'm going to show you the thought process going into this and how I've balanced things out. And after that, I'm going to let you know there are 2 other games that I have my eye on going into this weekend that are really good semi-arbitrage opportunities. There's definitely a lot of stuff going on this week. The value is shifting. A lot of these underdog teams look stronger than what we initially thought, and a lot of the elite teams like Philly and Indianapolis, they're looking a lot weaker than what we thought they'd be. So there's a lot of shifting going on, and usually the spread is slow to catch up on that. People are slow to make their opinions on these teams change. New Orleans is a good example of that. Last year, they looked. Everybody thought they were going to be a tough team, and they turned into a cream puff. And it took the public a long time to back off from that team and have things balance out. All right, so what we're going to do, I'm going to put stuff up on the whiteboard, and we're going to go through this semi-arbitrage that I'm looking at. Okay, so here's the semi-arbitrage that I'm on tonight. I favor the New York Giants to win this game. I believe they're going to beat the spread. However, I am not comfortable enough in that to actually just lay my money down straight on the spread and try to win. But I'm really loading up on this game, as you can see by my numbers. So I stand to win over $800 if this hits for me. So let me show you what I've done here. I believe that if the Washington Redskins hang in this game, the best shot of beating the spread is to keep this game in the under. So I bet on the under in this game. And you can see I've loaded up. There's quite a bit of money riding on this. There's $2,546. And then what I do is I put that amount into an arbitrage calculator, and I do a parlay. And what I did is, after betting the under, I took the Giants negative 3.5, and I parlayed them with the over. And you'll notice here I've got over 43.5, and this is the critical mistake that I was talking about before. I should have bought a half point here, but I didn't think of it until after, and I went to place my over bet. I'm kind of kicking myself for that. I hope that doesn't bite me. Now, the reason why that is critical is if the game turned out to hit 44 on the nose, this would end up pushing. I'd get this amount of money back and end up losing this amount here. I suppose there could be, it could be worse that I reversed it and not bought the half point up here. I'd end up losing that amount, and that would be a lot worse. But anyways, you know, the main idea is to buy that half point so that it doesn't end up pushing, and you end up actually hitting a win. And with the 44 points, this is not nearly as critical as the point spread of 7, which I didn't buy the half point on in the Miami game. And the 7 is just a really critical number in football. And you know, if you're going to play these semi-arbitrages, you know, you definitely want to buy a half point there. Okay, now this Miami game that I'm talking about, you know, it would have been inside of this deal up here. Okay, let's say instead of 3.5, this was 3. If I didn't buy a half point and the Giants ended up winning this game by a field goal, what would happen is they would push this money here. Okay, this part of the bet would end up coming back to me, and then, you know, so that would be half of this $650. You know, they'd just give that back to you, and then if this part failed, you know, I'd end up losing that. Or if that part won, I would win only this, and that's the worst case scenario, because if you win only this, you're losing here. So buying that half point is definitely critical. You know, it was a boneheaded mistake, but hopefully we'll come out smiling tonight, and you know, I will just remember to do that in the future. It was definitely a lot easier in the MLB because I wasn't worried about buying half points. The spread was always negative 1.5, so I didn't really have to put a lot of thought into that. Whereas the NFL, I've got to be a little more on my toes with that. So this is definitely a learning experience for me. So, anyways, the main idea that's going on here, and this is a real live example. You know, so I favor the Giants to win this game. So instead of just resting on that and just loading up on the Giants and hoping that they win, I've looked at the angles and thought, okay, if the score goes over, is it more likely that the Giants blew out the Redskins, or the Redskins hung in there in a shootout? I think that's the least likely scenario, because the Redskins seem to be a running team, and when it comes to passing, I just don't think that Kirk Cousins can go toe-to-toe with Eli Manning. You know, Kirk Cousins was a backup quarterback, you know, in the beginning of the season for a reason. And Eli Manning, you know, he's won 2 Super Bowls. You know, you can say what you want about him, but he's in the class of the elite quarterbacks. You know, you don't get those rings on your fingers for nothing. Okay, so I figured that the most likely scenario, if the game is to go over, is that the Giants are going to win and beat that point spread. Now, on the other hand, if the Washington Redskins stay in the game and they have a strong enough defense to do this, and the game goes under, by betting the under, it doesn't matter for me whether the Redskins win or whether the Giants win. At this point, I'm going to end up getting that money and make the profit anyways. So I'm estimating that this scenario here probably has maybe a 55% chance of happening. And then if the game goes over, I'd estimate that, you know, this has a 55 to 60% chance of happening. Well, when you add those differentials together, what happens is instead of a 75% chance of winning, which is statistically what this is at random, you know, I'm more in along the lines of an 85% chance of winning. And I'm basically risking a lot of money for an 85% chance of winning $800, You know, this is going to be over $800 if I win. Now, obviously, you know, if this was to lose, that'd be a devastating loss. I got almost $4,000 at risk here. You know, you add those up, that's what, $3,846. So that would definitely be a tough loss to take. You know, I'd be stepping backwards pretty far. However, you know, it's got such a high probability of hitting that I'm confident in pushing out that amount of money. You know, I feel really good that this is going to end up hitting for me. And that being said, we got two more situations coming up this weekend. And, you know, I talked about this before. You know, when you have really steep underdogs, then the most likely scenario for them to actually cover the point spread is if the game goes under the total. So we've got two different underdogs going on here. You've got Jacksonville and you've got Chicago. And they're facing the Patriots and the Seahawks. So in this case, I would take the underdogs and I would parlay them with the under in the total, not the over. And then I would bet the over. So it's kind of the opposite of what I've done here. You know, I would bet the under straight up, and no, I would bet the under parlayed with the underdogs, excuse me, and then I would take the over. And I believe in that particular case, you know, this is a lot of chalk to cover. You know, I would probably buy the half point right there, you know, instead of trying to avoid the push. In this case, you know, if they do end up getting blown out and lose by 2 touchdowns, well, that half point could get me at least some of my money back. And in that particular case, that's something that I would want to do. And in this case right here, you've got a special scenario going on right now with Chicago, where the quarterback, Jay Cutler, just got injured. So they're going to be going with their backup quarterback this weekend, I believe. And that's a little bit of a scary situation, but again, I think the same rules apply here. You know, if the Seahawks are going to blow these guys out, then the score is probably going to go over. And if Chicago manages to hang in there, then the most likely scenario of this happening is the defense is going to step up, keep the Seahawks in check, and at least keep them in the game. Now, this is a beautiful number right here. You know, 15. Not only do you have to win by 2 touchdowns, but you have to win by 2 touchdowns and a field goal, or 2 touchdowns and a safety. That's a lot to ask for. And that's not to say that won't happen, but, you know, I'm definitely looking at that situation closely and thinking, you know, this is probably one of the best scenarios to do something like this. Now, the other situation that I'm looking at these two teams with would be a 10-point teaser. And in that point, you get to add 10 points to this. So Jacksonville would be plus 23.5 instead of plus 13. And then Chicago would be plus 25. So I would have to find a third team to throw in with that. But this is a situation where, you know, there's definitely value in taking that side, because everybody is scared of this happening. And, you know, these numbers could change between today and Sunday. And, you know, if that goes above 14, I'll definitely be looking to tease that. So basically, anyways, this is a live semi-arbitrage. This is not played out yet. Most of you will not actually see this video until after it plays out. So hopefully I'm not going to be eating my words here, but you know, this is the real life, the real deal thing. You know, this is not me looking through papers and saying, oh, hey, look, you know, if I had done this, and this would have won. No, this is me looking at the situation and making a prediction, and putting my money on the line and seeing how things are going to play out. Now, the thing that I like about the semi-arbitrage, as opposed to most other forms of betting, is that I'm really putting that probability in my corner. If I can tweak these just slightly in my in my corner, then the probability of me winning just goes higher and higher. And there's not a lot of play between 25 and 0%, for losing, and that's straight up. I have a 75% chance of winning at random, and a 25% chance of losing. Now, if my analysis is correct, then I've cut that number significantly. So, I'm looking at probably an 85, maybe a 90% chance of covering this bet. Alrighty, well, if you like these videos, leave a comment down in the comment section. Hit that like button, and we'll see you in the next video.